Father, we thank you. We thank you for the fact that we can gather here and for the work that has gone into the preparation. We ask that you will oversee everything so that ultimately, as we receive information, it will make us more effective in our various ministries or spheres of ministry. We thank you for each of the individuals that are represented in the post, the district, the state, and the areas that they are representing. We ask your continued blessing on them. In your name, amen. Now, a few months ago, I focused on the fact that in our training, that when we encounter individuals in our posts or actually anywhere, that we should concentrate on attending to them well, to give ourselves wholly to being with them, not to be thinking of what we're going to say or something else, but to listen with intently to what they are saying. And it's amazing because people can perceive whether we're through our autonomic nervous system, they can perceive whether we are with them or not. And the more we attend and listen well, the more the conversation is going to be facilitated and they will open up more to us. And we can ultimately help them. Now, in the email I sent out to you, I sent a chart this time, and that chart, if you have printed it out, I want to just go briefly, and this ties into the attending and listening to people. As I attend and listen to people, I realize that each one of us come into the world with certain inherited capacities. That's at the top of my chart. And as we live in those early days up to about 4, 5, 6, we are subjected to environmental influences. And as a result of our reaction to those environmental influences, we develop a certain personality trait. Now, for instance, I'm more obsessive compulsive. None of these are right or wrong; they just are. But you will see in the sheet that I sent along as well. You not only have obsessive compulsive, you have a histrionic individual. They have more exaggerated emotion. You have passive aggressive, paranoid. You have the antisocial. You have the schizoid, the one that's detached. You have the explosive, the short fuse. And then you have cyclothymic. This is the alternating ups and downs. You get over the course of 6 months, the person could be up, and then they'll be down, depressed, and then they'll be up and high and hyper, and then they'll be down. Cyclothymic. Asthenic is the sickly person. I had one of my elders in my church. His wife was asthenic, and she, anytime you met her, she, oh, you say, hey, how you doing? And oh, I remember this was years ago when they were in my church. I said, I don't think you had a good day in the last 6 months. No, I haven't. So she was always. It's in some ways it's funny, but it's not. They're just no energy. They're sickly. But anyway, getting back to, we come into the world with certain inherited capacities. In those early years, with environmental influences, And it's amazing, even as a little infant up to 5, the impact those situations have on you. And the situation, I was in getting ready for this, I thought back to the my father had a difficulty with alcohol and no money. We lived in 3 rooms. And I remember going back, tying in some of the anxiety and fear I have today goes back to those early years of growing up in that environment. So anyway, we develop certain personality traits. Now, as we live our life today, we all have stress. You can't get away from it. You're gonna have stress, and that stress produces anxiety. And now most of us cope in a healthy manner. You know, the stress is there, and then it's relieved, then it's there, then it's relieved. And so you bounce back and forth. Now, how does this tie in with people in my post? When I'm talking to somebody and attending to them, I'm listening to them intently, and I observe and listen, and I realize this person's been under a lot of stress. And it's not just a short term, this is sustained. It could be stress in a marriage, it could be stress at work, it could be the sustained stress. So now that is the issue. If that stress increases, is sustained, and there's no periodic release, what's going to happen is initially that personality is going to go into high gear. For instance, for me, obsessive compulsive. When I was speaking at conferences thing, I had a big conference, let's say a major conference, and you want it to go well. That's stress. So there's stress getting ready for it. There's stress for as it's coming up, and all the details coming in order. And my personality, obsessive compulsive, I would want everything in order. My desk had to be in order. The house had to be in order. The car had to be clean. I mean, everything had to be neat and in order. Now, take away the stress, take away the anxiety. You know, do I have stuff around? Yes. Now that I'm retired, I have less stress. So there's stuff that starts appearing. But if I have stress come on, I can go into a cleaning mode. Now, if that stress continues and there's no release, you can develop a psychophysiologic disorder. I'll give you an example of my own life. When I was first at the university, at the college, of course, you don't earn much money initially. I had a church, and at the same time, I was looking for speaking engagements on the side. So I had this group call me, and they say, "Hey, we got 5 churches coming together. We're going to have 2,500 teenagers at such and such Pine Grove, or Pine. I forget the last Pine something, some big conference center. We would like you to come and speak to them." Now, I don't do well with teenagers, but I took it. So from the time I took it, stress started increasing. And it kept increasing as the time got, because then I had to get ready. And with teenagers, you have about 30 seconds. You either win or you lose when you speak. And so what happened was that eventually came and it unfolded, but the stress was that great that I developed a psychophysiologic disorder. That means something, your body begins to break down. For me, it's and it's usually a major organ. And so bronchitis. So I had bronchitis. I lost a week teaching at the college as a result of that speaking engagement. And that happened 2 or 3 times, and I realized, look, you don't need to take any more speaking engagements with teenagers. And since that time, I haven't had any major issues in that area. So, but some people come down with major back area, other things. So anyway, when you're talking with people in your post and you're listening to them and attending to them, you're listening for what stress are they under. Now, talking to you relieves some of that stress and pressure. But over time, if that continues, you can almost chalk it up. There's going to be a physical problem developed that they have. And if it continues, they can develop an anxiety neurosis or phobic neurosis or another neurosis, and it can get worse. But we're in there. It's kind of like we can release that valve and relieve the stress. Sometimes financial, if we can give them money, food, help them in some way, it will relieve stress for a period of time. And when that happens, that's part of our ministry. And so as I'm talking to people and you're talking to people and you're listening and you observe them, what type of personality they have, but you're listening to see what type of stress they're under and how sustained and how strong is it. And then how can I, as a chaplain, in talking to them, release a little, but in other ways, how can I release that valve and let some of that pressure out so that they can cope in a healthy manner? So anyway, it's something to think about. And I just sort of throw it out there to you with a listening, attending, and what you're looking for and how to relieve that stress. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that at this time. Take a look at the chart, analyze it a little bit. And at this point, I want to turn it over to Deb and Frank, and they're going to give a PowerPoint presentation on world religion.
There you go. Thank you very much. There's been questions along the way about world religions, and Frank and I got together and kind of put some stuff together. We will not, in this length of time, answer all your questions, but give you, we hope, a friendlier attitude towards some people who practice religions not our own. Is everybody seeing the shared screen okay? I can't see you, so you're going to have to answer me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is World Reflection, and it's just reflecting the United States. Basically, what the VFW does is reflect the population of the United States, because we have 1.4 million members with the comrades and the auxiliary added together. And that's a pretty good reflection of what you're going to see in the United States as a whole. So pretty much what I can tell you here, you're going to see, whoops, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, are you still getting the whole screen? I think I escaped it by accident. There we go. Sorry. So basically what we're doing is we're going through basically a reflection of the United States, but also I'm trying to give you an idea of what, and I can't get this thing to change slides now. Here we go. We're not going to skip that one. Okay. So we're going to go to what is religion. Now, we have our own idea what religion is, but religion is a system of beliefs that usually centers on whatever is beyond the known or the natural. It is commonly divided between elementary and higher forms. That's kind of a really thick answer. Religion is a cultural reflection of our need for a higher power. That's why each culture tends to have a little different of a concept of what is religion. Now, I was a social studies teacher. I'm certified in the state of Missouri and spent a lot of years teaching social studies and world religions. You will find every time you go to another geographical place, you not only find different people, maybe by the way they look or the way they talk, but you'll find that they're a reflection of how their culture has developed. And the culture develops around the weather, the terrain, the foods available. And of course, that influences how they have a concept of the higher power. We tend to address what we consider a higher power or God in different ways. God, though, is the universal term for deity, and deity changes with each religion, at least by name. It doesn't necessarily always change everything, but it changes by name. So some of us know God by God, some as Supreme Being, Brahman, the Great Spirit, and Allah and Yahweh, and so on. All religions pray. We all have conversations of some kind with that higher power. And it can mean to pour your heart out and everything, or it may just be simply you're giving honor to God in some fashion within your religious beliefs. But most all of us, depending on where we're at, do that in different ways, but we do talk to God in a sense. We're going to discuss 5 major world religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. I'm going to go to Hinduism. You're not going to see a lot of Hindus in the American public, but it's important to understand a little bit about it because it does have an influence over other things that happen. Most people in the United States that I know don't practice Hinduism as a primary religion, but they will practice the mantras. You'll see people with malas, which are strings of 108 beads, and they will repeat a mantra over and over. Now, the mantras tend to be in the Indian language. Hold on a second, sorry. And it's not that you need to understand what it means, but the point that you're repeating it over and over again gives strength to the prayer that you're looking for. Some of the mantras are looking for health. Some are looking for abundance or money. Some are looking for success. They're not any different than any other prayer in the world, just done differently. But it's important to note that Hinduism is the world's oldest organized religion. Think about that. That's an old one. They have 1 billion followers. And it's because Hinduism spreads out over the Indian continent, and outside of that, each area has a little different of a tradition or philosophy in their practice of Hinduism. There's several hundred gods in Hinduism. Pretty much there's a god for everything. And they have some written holy texts, but they're just more or less, they're not like the Bible. They're just more or less prayers. I'm sorry, I have bronchitis and it's killing me right now. Belief in Brahman is the universal soul of God. So yes, they have God, but they also have a variety of other gods that they also worship. Pretty much, if there's a thing on earth to look at, there's a god for it in Hindu. They work though they work the way they work because they believe in reincarnation. They believe that after the person dies, the soul lives on, goes to a place, and then comes back into a new life again, not necessarily human. Now, some groups say it has to be human. Some people say it doesn't. And that new life that you get after you've died and come back again is influenced by karma, the actions that you do every day of your life. So if you've been very good and done good things in your life, and you fulfilled your duty to life, you may get a better reincarnated space than you would have if you didn't. And if you didn't do a good job, you're reborn into a lower level life, which is why they have the caste system. If you don't, you may not agree with it, but that's theirs to have. And they have 4 paths to the goal: knowledge, love, work, and physiological exercise. And then 4 stages of life. That really doesn't help you a whole lot. I use these slides to teach other people other things with them. Buddhism is one of the old ancient religions that I truly enjoy. I like it because Buddha is not a god. Buddha is not a god. He is not the son of a god. He is not a god in any way, shape, or form. So if you see somebody with a little Buddha sitting on their desk or somewhere you see it, they are not worshiping Buddha. I'll tell you, he became enlightened by his studies and his good works. So he is the enlightened one or the awakened one. It began in India 2,500 years ago and is still the dominant religion of the East. That's probably all you really need to worry about there. Why people like it is because it preaches peace. It preaches taking care of other people. It gives you a chance to calm down and chill out. At least for me, it does. The Four Noble Truth is life is suffering. Yes, it is. The cause of suffering is selfish craving. So, in other words, if all you do is think about getting $1 million and that's your whole world, that's all you want is $1 million, then and all you do is take care of that craving, you're not taking care of anybody else, and sometimes not even yourself. But selfish craving can be destroyed. You can work away from that, and you can work away from not being a whole person by following the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path talks about wisdom, right understanding, and right thought. The division of ethical conduct, right speech. When you think about right speech, think about gossip. Right action, right livelihood is everything for the greater good of yourself and others. The division of mental discipline, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Are you keeping your thoughts into a positive and working forward thought system? You'll see several symbols used for Buddhism, and they more or less come from different places. Remember, I told you geography is really important when you start trying to figure out why things are like they are. Well, geography. And so these symbols basically came upon us because of the fact people were working on the same ideas of Buddhism, but in different locations. If you look now, Tibet has Buddhism. It's coming down into India. It's all over the East. So it's definitely something that's all over. But remember, those are huge geographical spaces. And so there they are. Islam is an interesting study. We as Americans tend to kind of cringe when people say Islam because we associate it with the jihad. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us maybe, is that Islam is not simply those people that practice jihad. In fact, some very nice people and some very nice places practice a very peaceful form of Islam, and it means literally to surrender. You're surrendering to God. The jihad didn't come up until, I don't remember now, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, when they used it as an excuse to create war. And so that's kind of a problem. Now, Islam, just like Buddhism and Christianity, is affected by the location, and therefore how they treat everybody else is affected by the location. So in some places like Bosnia, it's pretty much a very European place. It is Islamic, and it's kind of mild compared to what you might find in Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan, where they have very huge restrictions on several types of people, especially their women. But the things that are common is the fact that they follow the Quran. They worship in a place called a mosque, and there's about 1 billion followers to Islam. I one time taught, I was a National Geographic teacher for, I'll think about it, National Geographic. And I was paid a lot of money to go in a place and teach about Islam and teach about the different places that Islam occurs. And when I said to it was fellow teachers, when I said to the teachers, in most places, people who practice Islam are just regular people who are married, having children, trying to raise their children, trying to make a life, trying to have a home, trying to survive life. And they couldn't believe it, because in their mind, every one of those people were going to go out and blow something up. And let's be glad that 1 billion of them don't feel that way. The 5 pillars of Islam: there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. They also believe he was the last prophet. But let's remember one thing: it's Islam, it's Christianity, it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and Islam. So these people came after the Christians and the Jews, and they said that Muhammad was the last prophet. They pray 5 times a day. They practice charity. They observe Ramadan. And if possible, they try to make it to a pilgrimage to Mecca. Not everybody can get there. But I was there in Saudi Arabia during a time during the Desert Storm. And they didn't care about the fact that there was bombs blowing up and weird stuff happening. They just proceeded to walk across the desert to make it to Mecca, and they didn't care. So they were very careful trying not to hurt any of them, but it got a little hairy. Judaism means the kingdom of Judah, and it began about 2,000 years before Christ with Abraham as the founder. And since most of you are Christian, I probably don't have to tell you all about that. Judaism is the beginning faith for Christianity, Islam, and the Baha'i faith, which I'll get to in a little bit. It has about 4 million people that practice it. The holy text is the Torah, or the law. The Torah is loosely translated into the Old Testament. place of worship is a synagogue. They talk about God as Yahweh, and they have their holidays too. I think because we're American, we may know about some of those, like Passover and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And we probably also have heard about things like kosher and that sort of thing. I'm going to stop and tell a story here because I love this story and I got to bore you with it. When I was activating for Desert Storm, the battalion chaplain was an Orthodox Jew. He is the only Orthodox Jew I personally have met in the Army during my service, or even in the VFW. I've met Jewish people, but never Orthodox Jewish people. And I thought, everybody's ready, everybody's scared. You know, it's a weird feeling when you activate. Some of you understand that. And I thought, what is this Jewish guy going to be doing with the rest of us? He made sure there was a Catholic priest to say mass before we left. He made sure that he had on hand the Bibles. He had the King James Version. He had the English Standard Version. He had rosaries. He had St. Christopher's medals, and other little things that would be considered nice to have. And it didn't matter that you weren't Jewish. If he walked up to you, he'd ask you how you were doing. He'd ask you, what religion do you follow? And then he would ask you, do you want to pray with him? And one of my young Black troops said, he said yes, just because he wanted to see how on earth this very Jewish rabbi was going to deal with him in his Baptist faith. And I solemnly swear to you, I have never heard anybody in a yarmulke and very Jewish pray Baptist before, but by George, he managed it. I couldn't do it. I still can't do it. He can do it. He did it beautifully. He took care of everybody. If he couldn't take care of you, he got somebody to take care of you. And that was the guy that I want to be as a chaplain. I want to be like him when I grow up. But he was very open and very respectful to Christianity, Islam, and all that. Christianity, you all know this one. The Bible, the church, the name of God, Godfather of Abraham, and everybody knows about Christmas and Easter, I would guess. The VFW tends to follow what the national practice is, and most people who are chaplains, not all of them, remember, I didn't say all of them, tend to be Christian backgrounds. And in the VFW, I think I've had one that was universal, and one that really didn't have religion hardly at all, but he believed in service and taking care of his fellow man, and that's what he did as a chaplain. Major religious groups, and I think Frank had different numbers than I do, but this will give you ballpark. You're looking at a lot of Sunni Muslims. Remember that it's not just the Middle East that has Muslims. There is places in Europe and certainly Africa, and they're spreading to the United States and Canada. So you've got a lot of people out there supporting the Islamic faith. Christian Roman Catholics, we've got quite a few, about 1 billion of them. Hinduism, again, Hinduism is pretty much on the continent of India, but not only on the continent of India. And there's a lot of people here in the United States now beginning to practice Hinduism. Christian Protestants, Buddhism. Buddhism, of course, has its sects as well. Eastern Orthodox, very popular in Russia, among other places. Another form is Islam, Buddhism, and that is increasing. people that practice Buddhism and some that practice Hinduism don't practice it as their number one religion. They practice it as a secondary, as a helper. It gives them an opportunity to study or think of different things. It gives them an opportunity to think outside of the box that they were raised in. So you can get your own numbers, but Buddhism, a lot of people practice Buddhism. A lot of people like to read the things because it's very peaceful. It also tries to help them have the right thought, to have a more positive attitude. So that's why people do that. Shinto's Japanese, mostly. Christian Anglican. And then we've got the Sikhs, which are very interesting. We've got on Frank's stuff that he sent, we even have religious adaptations in uniform now. So you can see a woman with a veil. You can see a Sikh with his head wrapping. You can see a rabbi with a skull cap. Yeah, Peter. Did you have something? No. Okay. Taoism, and then Judaism, 6 million, almost 7 million. Orthodox. Now that doesn't count the people who are Reformed or conservative, which are different levels of strictness. Orthodox being very strict, conservative then, and then the Reformed. A friend of mine joined the Reform, and she invited me to a Friday night service, and I'll go anywhere because I'm as nosy as I can get to see how other people worship and what they do and how they do things, and how I can compare it in my mind to other things. And I went, and it was like Protestant, only they read the Torah and they opened it up out of a box and came out in a big scroll, and they took it out and they looked at it. It was fascinating. Frank?
Yes.
You had your hand up.
Yeah. If I just wanted to interject on this slide, if you're done before you move on, that's all.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the slide is a little misleading because according to the slide, it makes it look like Islam is the biggest group, but pay attention that this is denominations. Christianity is the biggest religious group in the world. Islam is smaller, but here on the chart it says Sunni Islam, but there's Sunni is the biggest. Then you have Shia,
Yeah.
then you have like Wahhabi, Islam in Saudi Arabia. And then I think this does point out the Roman Catholics are the biggest denomination or group within Christianity. But if you added Christianity, it would be by far the largest group. So it's just, this is based on sects or denominations. So it's may throw you off a little bit. That's all.
But it's an amazing group of information. And we're going to talk about Baha'i here in a minute. I've got a slide for that, so I'm just going to hold that one off. Minor world religions. Now remember, we had the majors. Now we got Confucianism, which is really not a religion, it's a philosophy. Jainism, Shintoism, Taoism. I'm going to screw this one up. Zoroastrianism?
Zoroastrianism.
Thank you. Thank you. I knew somebody had helped me out. Thank you.
Your gray box came back up.
I don't know why. Let me see if it's probably because I enlarged this. Hold on. Let me get this littler again. If it'll let me. Well, maybe it won't. Did that help any? Let me change slides and see if it'll go away.
You lost half of it.
Is that gone now?
Gone now.
Okay. Confucianism is a religious philosophy, and it's been in the history of China for over 2,500 years. It basically works with your virtue, your morality, and respect for the community. Because in the Chinese culture, you are fine, great, but really it's the majority that counts. It's the people, the community that counts most. So that's just, just a little difference there. Of course, we all like to read Confucius Says. But if you really want to know what Confucius says, please get a book that is truly about Confucianism, because people will make him say anything. You know, he's like the king of what do you call those fortune cookies. So we don't really want to go with what Confucius says out of a fortune cookie.
Proverbs.
Proverbs, thank you. Jainism is one of the oldest religion. It's comes out of India as well. Enlightenment through nonviolence and strict vegetarian. Eating root vegetables is even not allowed. I would not survive in this religion very long, but they even sweep the bugs out of the way so they don't step on them when they walk on the ground. So it's not, you're not going to run into anybody in the army that's been through this. Shinto is the ancient religion of Japan. It means the way of the gods. It started at least 1,000 years before Christ and is still practiced by about 5 million people. They believe that spiritual powers exist in the natural world. We won't run into this often in the VFW because we just don't have a lot of people that come into the VFW with this, but I thought I'd introduce it so that it makes sense. Taoism, I'm not going to go far in that either. It's on the slide. I can send you the slide. Zoroastrianism, the first monotheistic religion, about 4,000 years before Christ. And so there's where your beginning of monotheistic religions came from. Little history there. Sikhism, we're not going to go there. Baha'i, I want to talk about Baha'i because I think most of you probably haven't heard of it. Maybe not, but it's kind of a cool group of people because they provide the basis for advanced civilization. So what they do is they bring all of the religions together from one source. And not everybody's interested in hearing that exactly, but they work very hard to recognize all the great teachings of all the major religions. They have a 9-pointed star, which is the highest single-digit number and symbolizes the completement and fulfillment of expectation of all prior religions. And Baha'i, a lot of people think it's Islamic. It's really not. And it's not Christian either. So it's a very interesting religion. It's spreading somewhat. It was very, very popular in Iran for a while. And they decided to put a stop to that. Didn't go too well. A lot of those people were run out of the country when the Ayatollah fell. And in fact, I knew some the students down at Southwest Missouri State were from Iran. They were foreign students here, and some of them didn't get to go home. It was just too dangerous for them to go back. So they stayed in the States. And we have some shared religious common areas. The golden rule can be found in some form in just about every single religion on earth. Just about. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, rewarded a little differently for each religion's viewpoint and typical wording, but do unto others as you have them do unto you. Big rule. I had a book that I cannot find to save my life right now. I probably lent it to somebody, and it was probably 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. And all it had was different religious golden rules in it. And it was fascinating to see. Separation from the world, that we pray, that religion is used as a character development. We develop our faith. We have love and compassion with our belief in angels. And I think what's interesting is even religions who do not practice anything like Judaism, Christianity, or even Islam, believe in angels. It seems like angels are a very common thing, and certainly something that I think I'm coming out of this. Did I come out of the share? Okay. So, I just wanted to run through that. I wanted you to know that what we have in the United States is primarily Christian, but we do have a lot of Jewish people in our ranks. I found out how many Jewish people we have because I started my prayers. I start my prayers with, please join me in prayer as far as your faith and traditions allow. And you would not believe the number of people that came to me when I started doing that. And the Jewish people were the people that came first to me because they felt like for the first time they were invited to pray and that the prayers didn't say anything about Jesus. The second group of people that I hear from, ironically, are the, I call them nature religions, the pagans. Some people are Native Americans, Native American spiritualists, and some people are Wiccan in their belief system, which is an earth religion. Those people felt included and invited to pray with us. And so respecting those people is important. Remember, our point of prayer is to bring everybody together for the work of the VFW that we're going to do. And we can't do that if we've alienated any of the people in the process. Now, 100% across the board is going to be hard to come by, but it's a way to bring them together, and we can be friendly about it. I find I learn a lot about Christianity often through the eyes of people who are not Christian. And it makes me think and makes me work a little harder to be a little better at being a Christian. So that's my 2 cents. Frank, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, would you be able to turn over a host to me so I can show up just a few PowerPoints just to highlight a few thoughts?
I will do that as soon as I remember how to do it. I think it's right here. Make host, you're it. Now remember, when you turn this off, Frank, you cut everybody out.
Be careful. I'll turn it back over to you.
There you go.
Let's see if I can get this to, let me see, share screen. I volunteered before I got this going here. Let me see. Working on it. There we go. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Just real quick, kind of backtrack to kind of introductory material. Deb already said this, but about 89% of all Americans believe in some type of God or universal spirit. So that's about 90% of our population among the military and among America is spiritual, but in a variety of different ways. And only 50% of those believers are really engaged in organized religion. So that's kind of where we have an opportunity to kind of bridge that gap, kind of like pastoring the unchurched, so to speak. And I found this chart very useful. It's from the National Institute of Health. And they did a survey and they determined that among our military population nationwide, about 69% of our military self-identifies as Christian, with the largest denomination among that being Catholic at 20%, Baptist being the second largest group at 14%. And then it goes down into smaller groups like humanist, pagan religions. Deb mentioned, people that have like Native American religions, and our Jewish brothers and sisters are about 1%. So yes, we have other religions, but these are among the biggest. So here's another slide that kind of demonstrates that too. And this shows that among our members, about 50% would fall under the larger umbrella of Protestant, whereas Catholic would be about 24%, 16% would be none. Now, I just wanted to point out that within Christianity, quote unquote, there's a lot of different denominations. I think we're pretty all on board with that, with Catholicism being the biggest. Protestant is a very broad topic that would include like Lutherans, Baptists, Methodists. I can't even think of all the names. So they would be kind of lumped under that. So keep in mind that Protestant doesn't mean just one religion. It's kind of a broad category of many other types of Christianity. Among Christianity itself, this gives you kind of a breakdown, since again, the majority of our members are self-identify as Christian. About half are going to be Roman Catholic, about 36% are going to be Protestant, and then about 10% would be Eastern Orthodox. That would be like Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, things of that. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of our Christian population. Now, I put this slide up just to show that things are changing within the military, and we've made a lot of changes within our military community to accommodate what I call religious garb. You can see in the top left, the man wearing his turban. He's in an active duty Army officer uniform. Bottom left, you'll notice the cap, the yarmulke on a Jewish man. And then on the right, this is a young lady, second lieutenant in the Air Force. She's a Muslim scholar. I believe she is a type of chaplain to Islam. So I don't know enough about her yet, but they accommodated her wearing the hijab. So the landscape is starting to look different. So you might see somebody like this that you've probably never seen before. So things are changing in our military landscape. I just wanted to jump ahead to something here real quick, if I can get to it quick enough. Bear with me one sec here. Okay, when you look at this picture, what religion do you think this is? Just anybody shout out.
See,
Very good. Most people, when they see this, they just assume, oh, these must be Hindus. No, they're not. You have two groups from India. You have the Sikhs, which come from the Punjab region, which is a northern western area of India. And Sikhism is actually, or Sikhism, that's a fairly new religion that came out of like the 17 or 1800s by a man who had one parent was Muslim and one was Hindu, and he sought to try to reconcile the two religions. And so, forgive me for the oversimplicity, but it's kind of a hybrid. It takes some things from Islam and some things from Hinduism. That's not the most comprehensive, but it's one way to look at it. Hindus are on the picture on the right. They don't wear the turbans. Now, the word Hinduism, the actual word simply means the religious belief of Hindu. Hindu means people from India. That's all it really means. So it's a very broad term. Just a couple things on Hinduism. The official answer when you ask like a scholar or an academic person on how many gods are there in Hinduism, the official answer is literally 330 million. Now, does that mean that they counted them? No, not at all. It just means there are so many. They gave it a huge number because they're worried that they might leave somebody out. Now, again, the primary gods among, like, this is just a loose term, Hindu Trinity doesn't mean they have a Trinity like Christianity, but the three main big top gods, so to speak, would be like Brahma, the creator, Shiva, the destroyer, Vishnu, the preserver. Now, within Hinduism, you have tremendous freedom to worship, honor, in your own home, the God of your choice. And as I said, there are hundreds of millions. So you can go into different temples and different homes, and you might see different statues or different things in the house because you have the freedom to honor the God of your choice, which is very different from other religions. And I find it's particularly interesting because I spent about a month in Nepal, which is about 80% Hindu, and there was a lot of different temples and people worshiping different gods, and that's perfectly acceptable. Avatars, because of the movie, we're familiar with the term avatar, but I think very few people know where that term comes from. And within Hinduism, there's the belief that various times, what is there, about a 10 avatars, I think, I can't remember the exact number, but there's been times in history when one of the gods manifested himself or herself in physical form to minister to people on earth to help them get redirected, because humanity needed a lot of help. So one of the gods came down to give us some information, some teaching, and some new direction. Most of these are probably not familiar, but look, one of them is Buddha, one of them is Krishna. Those are familiar. And depending on the group of Hindus you talk to, some may even include Jesus and Muhammad as avatars. So an avatar is basically a manifestation of a Hindu god that came down to earth to intervene. So the movie Avatar, what an avatar is an incarnation of the Hindu deity. So if you saw the movie Avatar, if any of you saw the movie, it was basically these soldiers, kind of mercenary soldiers. They would somehow, through their technology, would become avatars. In other words, they would inhabit totally different bodies so they could mix with the local people of that planet they were on. And that's this blue creature here. They became avatars, meaning we changed our whole body structure to look like the locals so that we could interact with them on a more personal level. And if you remember the end of that movie, at the very end of the movie, I think one of the key characters, I don't remember now, they show him dying and then being reincarnated into a different creature. And that's the message of Hinduism. They were avatars, and at the very end, they show reincarnation. So this is kind of a form of, when you hear New Age religion, it's basically Hinduism repackaged for Western minds, because Western people would probably say, that's an Eastern religion, it's Hindu, that's not for me. Repackage it to be appealing to Western culture, and then it's okay. So New Age is very much connected to Hinduism, and this whole movie Avatar had a Hindu or New Age religion message in it. If you know about Hinduism, avatars, and reincarnation, you'll see that those were very much big parts of the movie, maybe subtly so, but they were in there. Here's an example of a Hindu god. This is Ganesh or Ganesha. He's pretty well known because he has the the elephant head with a human body. So this would be an example of a Hindu god that's very popular within India. And Ganesha is the god of possibilities, the enabler. So that's what makes him popular, because he's the god of opportunities. So that's where that comes from. I won't get into the mythology behind him, but this would be an example of a very popular god that's believed in. Deb already touched on that. And she also touched on this. I actually took these photos in Nepal, and I went to a Hindu cremation site outside of Kathmandu. And cremation is mandatory. It's required for Hindus, because the only way you can get reincarnated, as Deb mentioned, you have to incinerate your body, and that's what frees the spirit to be free and eventually come back as a new creation. You can see on the picture on the right, that's a funeral pyre. In other words, you could see feet sticking out on the right. There was a person that was brought down for incineration, and that would release that body so it could go into its next body. Hindu temples are going to be fairly ornate, like these pictures show. This one, believe it or not, is in Corona, California. You'd think this was in India, but it's not. And just one last thing, just on a practical note, this is an actual picture I took at that same site in Kathmandu. This man is actually a leper. We hear about leprosy in the Bible. I personally have never seen a leper until I saw this man. And being nosy and coming from a medical background, I thought this is going to be a good teaching slide. So you can see that he's missing fingers and toes and such. Now, what does that have to do with anything? For this class is that within the Hindu mindset, as Deb said, you have reincarnation and karma that has to be paid off. So to us Westerners, we would think this poor man has leprosy. Let's give him money. Let's get him medical care. Let's give him a place to live and help the man. Within Hinduism, that is the worst thing you could do, because if you give him money or give him a home or whatever, you're going to interfere with his suffering, and you're going to interfere with his paying back the crimes or the bad things he did in his previous life. And now you're being actually cruel to the man, because he may end up being reincarnated into something just as bad or worse because you interfered with him paying back his karma, so to speak. So again, that's very antithetical to Western thinking, that in that religion, he's there because he deserves it. He did bad things in his previous life, so now he's suffering as a leper. And because he's suffering now, he's going to come back in his next life. It's something much more happy and better. So the inclination is you don't help this people. It's not because they're thoughtless or mean. It's because you're going to cause him suffering in his next life. So that's very, very different. And that's why you hear like Mother Teresa, why she was such a strange concept, because she believed, let's take care of these people. Whatever you think of Mother Teresa, that goes against predominant Hindu thinking. So again, just a cultural context. So that's all I wanted to share on that, and because I thought it was very interesting. And I'll turn this back to, let's see if I can get it back to Deb. Hope I can do this right. Okay, back to you, Deb. It's yours again. Thank you for accommodating me.
So basically, what we run into, of course, is Christian, some Jewish. I run into some of the earth religions, like I said, Native American spiritualism and Wicca. When I run into people who practice Hinduism and Buddhism, they're not totally Buddhist or Hindu. They're usually people who've cafeteria style taken bits and pieces of that religion and adapted those practices for themselves in their own unique way. But you'll see every once in a while somebody in the VFW that'll have lots of beads wrapped around their wrist, and it usually has like a little fob on the end of it. That's usually a mala. And that means they are probably practicing saying mantras. And they do that in Buddhism as well as in Hinduism. They're a little different, but they're kind of the same. And I'm trying to think of who else I ran into.
Some Islamic people use prayer
Yes,
beads.
Islamic. And one of the interesting thing about Islamic people is until they get to know you well, often they will not tell you they are Islamic. And I'm not going to generalize, so don't go there with me, but most of the ones that I have met are older Black soldiers, because 70 plus years ago, that was a more commonly used religion in the United States than it is now among the Black population. I haven't met any white people that practice Islam unless they are directly from Bosnia or whatever, but not the old American families. And they don't tell anybody because their practice of Islam is not a jihadist. They're just simply practicing the 5 pillars, and they read their book, and they're very, very calm people. And so I've had probably 3, and they're all from the greater St. Louis area in the time that I've been doing this. So I see that Alan has his hand raised. Alan, what do you have for us?
Yes, thank you, Deborah. You had mentioned something about being inclusive when you did prayers and stuff, and that just reminded me of how I operate, especially when I do, let's say, for instance, this last Veterans Day, the invocation and benediction for the city public Veterans Day ceremony. I used what I saw. I kind of, in the chaplain's handbook, there are some prayers that say, almighty ruler of the universe. And that's what I kind of do to be inclusive of everybody that's out there, you know, the public, just to include everybody, not knowing, you know, what religion they are, just to include everybody.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. I've never been a fan of that, but that's my personal opinion, because I don't think all religions see God as the ruler of the universe. They see him as maybe the creator, or they maybe see him as part of the universe. So I don't tend to use that one, but a lot of people use it. It's common with a lot of people. And anything else, Alan?
Nicholas.
No,
Nicholas?
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Hey, good evening. I just want to make if I may make a quick clarification, the brand of Islam that's practiced in Southeastern Europe near Turkey, it's going to be the Turkish brand, and they don't get along with the Sunnis nor the Shia either. Just want to make that distinction there. I don't think that was mentioned at all.
Well, like I said, it goes African Islamic practices have very little to do with what goes on in the Middle East. And the inner fighting is not the same. It's not to say that never happens. It's just to say it's not the same. Remember, religion goes with geography. And geography has different human beings living in it. And different human beings get different traditions and cultures. And therefore the religion, even though the base may be the same, changes. One of the most interesting things I ever saw was probably about 30 years ago. A group of Catholic Africans came to the States. Big group, probably 30 or 40 of them. And they came and they did a mass at a local church. And of course, I am as nosy as I can get. So of course I showed up. I'm a social studies person by nature. And I find religions fascinating. So if you got a religion for me to see, I'll go see it. So they were going to talk about how different they did mass compared to what you see normally in the Catholic Church in St. Louis area. And I'm here to tell you, we don't do anything much like that. The basis of the Mass was the same. The blessing of the Eucharist was pretty much the same. But the singing, the dancing, yes, all up and down the aisles. The prayers were prayed a little differently than what we're used to. And had I not known it was Catholic, I may have wondered what religion I was in. But devout and very prayerful. So, you know, again, religion goes along with the geography oftentimes. Anybody else? Any other comments? We're going a little long tonight.
Yeah.
Deb, just one quick comment.
Go ahead.
You know, we're talking about just very basics about different world religions, and I have a very nice library at home with so much information on different religions and such. Just one little word of advice. Deb mentioned that there's so many denominations or sects within a religion. So don't, you know, if somebody's, let's say, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, whatever it might be, don't assume you know what they believe in practice, because there's variation within sects and denominations. And the books I have in my library, they're a few years old. That church leadership may have made a minor change to some of their doctrines or their practice. So it's never good to assume you know what they believe. It's better to ask them, tell me about what you believe. Much safer, and you build bridges there, because it's easy to just assume, and I've been caught in that until I learned otherwise. So thank you, Deb.
I think that's a good point, Frank, and thank you, Deb and Frank, for the presentation. And as we continue on and minister within our spheres, either the post, district, and encounter our comrades, attend to them, listen to them, value them, and I think that will enhance our ministry with them. So I trust that you have a good holiday that's coming up next week. And on December, we will not have a Zoom meeting. We'll pick it up in January again. And if you have any questions or you encounter anything along the way, feel free to email me. You have Deb covering the Big Ten. You have Frank covering the Western. And you see Darren Atkins there. He's state chaplain of Kentucky, but he's covering the Southern Conference. So we have the four conferences, Big Ten, Western, Southern, and I was the Eastern. Now there's another gentleman from New York who's now the Eastern Conference chaplain. Unfortunately, I don't see him on here tonight, but you will get to know who that is. But we work together, and we'll pick up again, okay? If there are no other questions, I'll ask God's benediction on us as we depart.
Let me say one more thing. The link, the Zoom link will change starting in January. It'll be a new Zoom link. So pay attention to Peter's newsletter so you get the proper one. Please remind the people that you have, that you work around, that this is happening. January, we're going to start with new stuff again, and we need people to attend. And I know that there will be the fall stuff in January and February, so it's a good time for you to get this out to your people in your areas. And I know a lot of you are department chaplains, so I ask you to do that work for us. Thank you.
And you'll see Dale Anella up there, Chappie. He's in Washington State, and he's the one that handles all of our technical things on the website. And so if you'll go into my email, you'll see the links there, and that's all handled. If you have any questions, you would contact Dale Anella. So I'm going to ask God's blessing on us as we depart, okay? Our Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing on us. We separate for a time. And as we work with our comrades in our posts, help us be very sensitive to them, where they are, and ultimately try to help them. So we ask your blessing on each of us as we separate in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Deb, thank you so much. That was very enjoyable. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Well, Frank, you were
Amen.
in this.
Good, thank
You
you.
can unhook yourselves if you want to say something to each other. I'll let you talk for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to turn this off because my medicine for my bronchitis is wearing off, and I'm needing to go do something else with it.
Good, thank you, Deb.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Deb.
Yeah, get well soon, Darren.
Thank you
And
much. Appreciate it.
I'll even
Thanks.
turn off the recording because I'll remember. Somebody just showed up.
Thank you, everybody that showed up. We really appreciate it. It's very encouraging to everybody else.